Welcome back to Clash of the Rams. I'm here with Mike, Jared, and Eric. Now let's jump right into hockey. Mike, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of the Bruins right now on their hot streak?
Well, the Bruins have definitely kind of separated themselves from all the other teams in the Eastern Conference, especially with the Penguins coming off of 2 back-to-back losses from the Flyers. Really, it's all cylinders going for the Bruins right now. You know, all their forwards on the top line, Iginla, Krejci, and Lucic, all over 50 points, playing their most consistent hockey. Tuukka Rask has been a rock in net. Really, everything's all cylinders flying, and really the only concern is if they're getting hot too early. And the thing you have to look at is their key guys playing so much. Is Tuukka 49 games in net. Chara with a lot of ice time. Especially with Seidenberg not being there, divvying out that time for Chara and letting other guys get in experience just so they don't burn out come playoff time, because it's a long grind.
Jared?
Well, you mentioned with Chara, correct. Like, it makes so much sense. Why is that? Why is Chara thrown out on the ice? What is he doing out there, knocking up high 20 minutes on the ice time a game? You don't need to be doing that, especially because they have such a big lead in the East. They're the best team in the East. Throw out the rookie, throw out the young guys, throw them out there, get them the experience so they can build up the time. Because in the playoffs, that's when it matters. They're going to be out there. They're going to be the guys that are right out there. So yes, you don't need Zdeno Chara out there for almost 30 minutes every game against the Florida Panthers. It doesn't need to be happening. Tuukka Rask, yes, do notch on it. 49 starts right now. It's his career high. So yes, they do need to rest these key guys right now.
I'm totally with you guys. Last weekend, when the Bruins played back-to-back games against Tampa Bay and Florida, the night of that second night of that back-to-back, Chara played against Florida, and I'm saying that's a perfect night to give him a day, and they didn't do it. And I think going forward with that big lead that they have, they know they're going to be the 1 or 2 seed. I don't think it really matters where you are. Last year it didn't matter. You weren't the top seed. You still beat Pittsburgh, so that doesn't really matter. It's not a big factor in hockey, but I think they need to rest guys. They need to rest Tuukka. They need to rest Chara, because those are the guys you're going to lean on in the postseason, and you have the ability to do that. They have to do it now.
Well, I definitely think that Claude Julien's definitely starting to rest guys. I mean, when you look at it in the game against Carolina, Boychuk had more ice time than Chara before Boychuk went down, and now Boychuk's missing a game, with that lower body injury. How serious is that going to be down the road? They picked up Mazzaros, which is a nice pickup, and he could fill in there, but losing Boychuk and already not having Seidenberg could be a really big factor for that defense, because there are so many young guys. It was nice to see Dougie have a nice game against Carolina after sitting out 2 games. It was nice to see Krug score after sitting out a game last week. So there's a little more rotation in the defense now that they picked up Mazzaros. But health and experience is definitely an issue that is worth paying attention to with this team.
I just want to make a point that after the trade deadline, the masses were ready to riot because the Bruins didn't do enough. They didn't go and get Thomas Vanek. They didn't make a big move up front. They didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
That isn't a need for them. They got the depth defenseman that they wanted. There wasn't a top pairing defenseman on the market. So there was nothing really more that they could do or that they had to do. And the Bruins have showed since then that they are still the team they have been the last 3 or 4 years. They're a top contender for the Stanley Cup. They've won 8 games in a row. They are one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the East right now. So they did not need to do or make a huge move like everybody wanted them to do. This team is legit. As long as they have Chara, Rask, and Bergeron, they will be.
They also didn't give up anything.
A team to beat.
They didn't give up anything.
Right.
They kept their future intact, which is key, because they're good now and they're going to be good in the future still. They didn't give anything up.
What I also want to hitch on is why this team right now is not peaking early. The health is the concern. But when I hear peaking early, I think some teams they get hot early and then they cave out and they die down towards the end because they just lose that motivation. But I think there's one specific player that you are relying on is the reason why this team is different from any other team, and that's Jarome Iginla. That guy, he has won almost everything other than a Stanley Cup, and throwing him on that top line, they have produced almost 20 more points this year at this point than they did with Nathan Horton. So Jarome Iginla leading that team, being one of the leaders on that team is huge, and I don't think they're all veterans. They've been through this before. Most of that team has been through it last year. They're not going to die down. They're not that. They're veterans. They know they've been there before. So this team is not going to peak too early and then come in the playoffs be one and done. because I think, unless the health concern, that is the only concern with the peaking early.
Yeah.
But Jerome McGinley is a guy that they have got out and that is a huge plus for this team.
Look at that top line, and they have 47 points combined over the last 14 contests, which is huge. But, to the peaking early point, you look at the second line. The success on the second line, with Riley Smith being a big surprise. Bergeron's been pretty solid. And Marchand, that line's been kind of quiet lately. Riley Smith hasn't scored in over 10 games. Bergeron hasn't, Bergeron's been kind of on a slight cold streak, Marchand's been playing good. If those guys pick up their play and get even with the first line, they're even more unstoppable.
Right, and plus, Patrice Bergeron's on that line.
Yeah.
I have no doubts that they will step it up when mid-April rolls around. The postseason.
Just one quick point on Iginla. It's all about consistency with that line. I love Nathan Horton. He was a great player, especially in the postseason, but he had some lulls during the regular season where he didn't do much. I think it spread to the whole line where Lucic and Krejci would have those belts too. With Iginla, they've been solid all the way through. That's what you need from your top line.
He has made them stay consistent. Excellent point.
All right, we focused a lot on the Bruins. Now I'm going to do a little improv with you guys. I want each of you to tell me who's going to win the West right now. Not who's going to win the West, but who's the best team right now in the West. Mike?
Well, I mean, it's like a 5-team race right now, with the Blues, pretty much being the front runner, best record, most points in the NHL. Right behind them are the Ducks and the Sharks. Sharks are the hottest team out west. But right now, I don't want to count out the Blackhawks, especially come playoff time. Experience is such a key thing there. And, if their offense gets going, they play pretty solid defense. Corey Crawford's an experienced playoff goaltender. I really think that people are sleeping on them a little bit this year with the Ducks, the Sharks, and the Blues. So I really think that they're a team to watch out for.
I made this prediction about a month ago before the trade deadline that the Stanley Cup is going to be the Bruins and Chicago. And that was before the trade deadline, so I'm going to change it up. It's going to be the Bruins. And the team to come out of this, I think, is going to be the Blues. That team is insanely good. And because the big move was getting a goalie, Ryan Miller, he's playing in Buffalo Sabres. Now he finally goes to a team that matters. He's right in that West, and they have been 6-0-1 with him, 1.7 goals against average, being on the Blues in those 7 games. He's been insane. The Blues, they are, I want to say they're first in goals in the entire NHL. They've scored the most goals. I think they're second in goals per game. Their goals against, I think they're third. So they're such a balanced team, and they have that will and fight. They have never, I believe they have never won a Western Conference champion. They've never obviously won the Stanley Cup. So this is a team that is fighting for something, and they have the talent, and they are so balanced, and they are so good. So I think adding Ryan Miller was what put them over the edge.
I think we're all on the same page on this one. I hate to write off Chicago because they're so good, and they are flying under the radar a bit this year, but they're going to be right there. Mm-hmm. They're so talented. They're so deep that they're going to be there in the end. But I like St. Louis too. The move to get Ryan Miller is like the move. That's one of those moves that wins you a Stanley Cup. Go and get a top tier goalie to bring you all the way, but. They're like a mirror image of the Bruins. They're defense first, but they can score. Okay, they're like you said, they're a balanced team. They have a great goaltender now. They have the defensive mind that you need to win a championship. I think having that Bruins style of play is something that's really catching on in the NHL. Teams realize that they have to play that way to win a Stanley Cup. So I like St. Louis, but I'm not writing off Chicago. I'm not writing off Anaheim or any of those other teams either, but I think it's St. Louis and Chicago.
Now, the thing you have to look out, though, with St. Louis is, though, they don't have the playoff experience. A team we haven't mentioned, because they're a little bit behind those top 5, is the Los Angeles Kings, who've knocked out the Blues the past 2 seasons in the playoffs, and they have the lowest goals allowed total in the league. So you look at the Blues, who might have to face a team like Los Angeles early. And, the thing with the West is there are so many good teams that those lower seed teams are going to face good teams early.
With the Los Angeles Kings, they've scored less goals than the Florida Panthers this season. And, yes, they've allowed the least amount of goals, but St. Louis have allowed the 3rd least goals. So there's 2 great defensive teams. But I think St. Louis this season, is a way different team than they've been in the past. When the Kings won the Stanley Cup, they faced the St. Louis Blues team that was completely different. They faced the New Jersey Devils. They faced the Phoenix Coyotes. I think this year in specific, the teams are just so much better than them. Yeah. I think they have just improved so much better. And I think the Kings, their inability to score goals this season specifically, is really going to hurt them because they've allowed 5 goals to Chicago and the Blues this season already. And I don't think that they will match up well in the West this season specifically.
But I really think that experience is a big thing when it comes to playoff time,
Yep.
and I really think that the Blues lack that playoff experience. Miller had the Olympic run 4 years ago, but other than that, they don't really have many guys who have played Stanley Cup deep into the playoff hockey, where the Kings have, the Blackhawks have.
I totally disagree with you.
And it's the same reason why we haven't even brought up the Avalanche yet, because we haven't even spoke about the Avalanche because they don't have an experience
I disagree
either.
with you on the experience with St. Louis. They've been to the playoffs the last couple of years. They haven't made it all the way, but the Bruins didn't make it all the way either. They went to the playoffs. They got kicked out in the first round. They got kicked out in the second round a couple of years in a row. Then they won the Stanley Cup. St. Louis has been in the playoffs. They have some playoff experience. They've been there. I don't think the experience is such a huge factor with them as maybe Colorado, who's more of a younger
I think
team.
a will to win and talent will win more so than experience. I think St. Louis has far more spirit of that than experience.
It's not necessarily just being in the playoffs, though. It's the playoffs in the NHL. It's a 2-month grind. It's a 2-month grind. And yeah, the Blues have been there at the beginning, but they've never been there at the end. Okay, and that's like a whole separate season. It's like putting it into fifth gear, and they've never been there before.
The Bruins weren't there either. I made that point. So I don't know. I don't disagree. I disagree with you.
I think right now in this case between the LA Kings and St. Louis, the talent of St. Louis and the will to win, I think, is far superior than the experience the LA Kings have. They can't score goals. They can't put the puck in the net. They have to do it against Ryan Miller and a great defensive team like St. Louis Blues, who I think may defensively be in the top 2 in the NHL. So the LA King has to do that, and they can't. They have less goals than the Florida Panthers. Tim Thomas bobblehead night is the only thing the Florida Panthers have going for them, and they screwed that one up too because he was traded on the team. I just do not think the LA Kings are going to beat the St. Louis Blues.
All right, I gotta cut you off because we gotta move on. I think we're all kind of in disagreement about the Blues. I feel like that's where a lot of the argument stands. But I think we can agree that the Blackhawks are a team that you can't sleep on since they're the reigning champs.
It comes down to St. Louis and Chicago in the West.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
we'll
too
see.
hard to pick a favorite, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to see. We still have a lot of games left to go. But yeah, when we get back, we're gonna have our final debate, and it's gonna be about the Red Sox. So stay tuned.